Here's the uncomfortable truth. Civilizations don't collapse overnight. They unravel in stages. Economies weaken, trust erodes, corruption spreads, and chaos slowly replaces order. It's not a theory anymore. It's happening in real time. Empty shelves, political division, digital censorship, and vanishing freedoms, all signs that America isn't heading toward collapse. It's already deep in it. This isn't fear-mongering. It's pattern recognition. Every fallen empire followed the same 7 stages of decline, and right now, the United States has entered stage 5, the breakdown of trust and control. In this video, we're breaking down all 7 stages, how societies crumble step by step, where America fits into that timeline, and what comes next if history keeps repeating itself, because once you understand the pattern, you'll see exactly how close we are to the point of no return. Let's dig in. There's a pattern in history that's taken down every global superpower for the last 500 years. And right now, in 2025, America is walking that same doomed path step by step. The same arrogance, the same corruption, the same financial decay, all unfolding like a script we've seen before. In 1590, Spain was untouchable, the richest empire on earth, sitting on half the world's gold and silver. Their military ruled Europe. Their currency was trusted everywhere. Within 80 years, they were bankrupt, a fallen power buried under their own debt and greed. Fast forward to 1914. The British Empire controlled a quarter of the planet. The pound sterling was the world's reserve currency. The sun never set on British rule until it did. Within just 40 years, the empire collapsed, the currency lost dominance, and Britain became America's sidekick. Then came the Soviet Union, nuclear-armed, feared, and rivaling the U.S. in every way, until its economy imploded from within. No war, no invasion, just total systemic failure in less than 900 days. 3 empires, 3 collapses, all following the same 7 stages of decline. And now, America has entered stage 5, the stage where trust breaks down, systems fracture, and the illusion of stability starts to shatter. And here's the part that should truly terrify you. The United States isn't approaching collapse. It's already 5 stages in. The pattern isn't theoretical anymore. We're living inside it. This is the story of how empires die, why every one of them swore they were different, and why the data, the debt, and the direction all say America is next, and it's unfolding faster than anyone wants to admit. Before we break down the stages, you need to understand what collapse actually looks like, not in history books, but in real time. Because it doesn't begin with a foreign invasion or a lost war. It starts with something quieter: economic exhaustion. The empire grows too large, too stretched, too expensive to sustain itself. Military bases in 150 countries, endless wars, promises it can't fund, debts it can't pay. For a while, everything still looks fine. The dollar still holds, the military still wins, the government still talks tough, but beneath that surface, the foundation is already crumbling. Resources get wasted, productivity declines, the talent leaves, corruption rises, and then acceleration begins. Allies start hedging, confidence evaporates, the illusion fades. And what's left is the same fate that ended every empire before enemies start testing boundaries. Trade partners quietly look elsewhere. The reserve currency, once the symbol of dominance, starts to lose its grip. And suddenly, the very things that made you powerful become the cracks that bring you down. Your currency, once demanded by the world, floods back home as foreign nations ditch it. Your global military presence turns from strength to strain. Your promises, once backed by unmatched credibility, start sounding hollow. That's not a theory, that's history. It happened to Spain, to Britain, and to the Soviet Union, and now the United States is making the same fatal moves they did. Each believed their power was permanent. Each overextended their reach. Each debased their currency, and each ignored the warning signs until it was too late. So let's rewind the tape and look at how this collapse pattern has repeated itself 3 times before. Because the story of America's fall didn't start today. It started centuries ago, with the world's first true global empire, Spain. The year was 1492. Columbus had just discovered the Americas, and Spain was about to rewrite world history. They crushed the Aztec and Inca empires, seizing mountains of gold and silver. By 1550, Spanish galleons were hauling home over 200 tons of silver a year. Doubling that by 1600, Spain was the money supply of Europe. Rich, untouchable, invincible, or so they thought. The Spanish real became the global reserve currency, the dollar of its time. Everyone wanted Spanish silver, and that's where the pattern began. A nation that controlled the world's money and believed that alone made it untouchable. King Philip II, who ruled from 1556 to 1598, had more wealth than any monarch in history. But instead of stability, he bought expansion. And that marked stage one, military overextension. Spain fought everyone, everywhere. The Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, France and Italy in Europe, Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, the English Navy at sea, wars in the Philippines, and endless campaigns across the Americas. By 1580, Spain was bleeding resources on 4 continents at once. Half the empire's revenue went straight to the military. And even that wasn't enough to hold it all together. Then came stage 2, currency debasement. When tax revenue couldn't cover the empire's spending, Spain did what every collapsing power eventually does. It started to fake prosperity. They mixed copper into silver coins, turning once pure currency into junk metal. At first, no one noticed. The coins looked the same, but their real value collapsed. 50% silver, then 25%, then almost none at all. Merchants stopped trusting them. Prices skyrocketed, inflation exploded, and the wealth that had once made Spain unstoppable became the very thing that destroyed it. Stage 3, the debt spiral. Spain's spending addiction didn't just drain its treasury, it buried the empire in debt. The crown borrowed endlessly from Italian bankers, German financiers, anyone willing to keep the illusion of power alive. By 1557, less than 20 years into Philip II's reign, Spain defaulted, bankrupt. They restructured, made promises, borrowed again, and defaulted again. 4 bankruptcies in just 40 years. Each time, the same story. Reform pledges, temporary relief, and then right back to reckless spending. Spain wasn't managing wealth anymore. It was mortgaging its future. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. Here's the twist most people miss. Spain didn't collapse in spite of all that gold and silver. It collapsed because of it. When money seems endless, productivity dies. Why grow crops when you can import food? Why build ships when you can just buy them? Why innovate when you can simply spend? The nobility began to see honest work as beneath them. Factories went silent, farms dried up, Spain's domestic industry shrank while imports soared. All that gold from the Americas didn't enrich Spain. It passed right through, flowing to France for wine, Italy for silk, the Netherlands for goods. By 1600, Spain, once the richest empire on earth, was producing almost nothing. The flow of wealth had become a one-way street, out. And the empire's foundation of silver and pride was already turning to dust. They became completely dependent on imports, on silver, on a system that couldn't sustain itself. When the mines in the Americas started to run dry and silver production dropped, Spain's entire economy unraveled almost overnight. Stage 5, social decay. As the wealth vanished, so did stability. Crime exploded. Beggars filled the streets of Madrid. The productive class, merchants, craftsmen, intellectuals, fled to France, England, and the Netherlands, nations that were building what Spain had squandered. What was left behind? Bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests, a society consuming wealth instead of creating it. By 1640, Spain lost Portugal. By 1650, the Netherlands, its richest territory, was gone. By 1700, the once mighty Spanish Empire existed only on maps. Vast in size, hollow in substance, they went from global superpower to a powerless relic in less than a century, never to recover. The descendants of the conquistadors became a tourist attraction, their empire reduced to history books and ruins. That is what imperial collapse looks like. Now fast forward 300 years to the next great empire that believed it would never fall. Britain, early 1900s, the empire where the sun never set. At its height, it ruled a quarter of the planet's land, more than 400 million people. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency, the financial heartbeat of the world. Every major trade deal was priced in pounds. Every central bank held British bonds. London wasn't just a city, it was the financial capital of the planet. And like Spain 300 years earlier, Britain believed its dominance was permanent. But the pattern had already started repeating. Stage 1, military overextension. By 1900, the British Empire had troops scattered across the world. India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. They weren't defending a nation anymore, they were policing a planet. The cost was staggering. Then came 1914, World War I. Britain faced a brutal choice: stay neutral and let Europe destroy itself, or jump in and risk everything to win. They chose to fight. The war cost Britain over $40 billion, roughly $1 trillion in today's money. They borrowed massively, mostly from the United States. By 1918, the tables had turned. The global lender had become the global debtor. Britain had won the war, but lost its financial independence. They believed they could rebuild the empire. They were wrong. Stage 2, currency debasement. The pound sterling had always been as good as gold, literally, but after the war, Britain's gold reserves were gutted. The pound no longer had the metal to back its promise. So, like Spain before them, they did what every declining empire does. They faked strength on paper. The printing presses roared to life, the currency weakened, and inflation began eating away at the illusion of prosperity. Britain had shipped tons of gold to America during World War I to pay for weapons, food, and supplies. By 1920, their reserves were half of what they'd been before the war, but pride wouldn't let them admit defeat. In 1925, Britain re-pegged the pound to gold at the pre-war rate, pretending nothing had changed. That decision was economic suicide. The pound became overvalued, British exports were suddenly too expensive, factories slowed, unemployment soared, and the government was forced to keep interest rates painfully high to defend the illusion of strength. By 1931, the illusion shattered. Britain was forced off the gold standard, and the pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency, the world's symbol of trust, had just confessed it couldn't keep its promises. Stage 3, the debt spiral. Britain never escaped the financial wreckage of World War I. Then came World War II. Another $120 billion in costs, more borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owed the US and Canada more than its entire GDP. They'd won the war militarily, but lost the empire economically. Stage 4, loss of empire. The retreat began immediately. In 1947, Britain gave up India, the crown jewel that had bankrolled 2 centuries of dominance. Over the next 2 decades, the rest followed: Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in textbooks and nostalgia. Stage 5, currency collapse. The pound's decline became permanent. In 1940, £1 equaled $4.03. By 1950, it was $2.80. By 1970, $2.40. By 1980, $2.30. The world's most trusted currency had become just another piece of paper, and the empire that once ruled a quarter of humanity was reduced to an island living on memory. By the late 20th century, the pound, once the world's reserve currency, had become just another regional medium of exchange. Britain tried to preserve the illusion of global relevance: a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, nuclear weapons, the so-called special relationship with America. But everyone knew the truth. The empire was gone, and it wasn't coming back. The world had moved on. Now let's turn to the most recent collapse: the Soviet Union, 1945 to 1991. After World War II, the USSR rose from the ashes as a new superpower, nuclear-armed, technologically ambitious, and ideologically convinced that communism would outlast capitalism. They didn't just see themselves as equal to the West, they believed they were the future. For 45 years, they raced against America, tank for tank, missile for missile, satellite for satellite. But beneath the military showmanship, the same old decay was setting in Stage 1: military overextension. The Soviets spent a staggering 15 to 20% of their GDP on defense, 3 times what the US spent trying to match American technology, global reach, and influence. They poured money into Afghanistan, Cuba, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, Ethiopia. Anywhere the US had a footprint, the USSR had to respond. It was an empire built on competition, not sustainability. The cost was impossible to maintain. Stage 2, economic stagnation. By the 1970s, growth had stopped. Oil exports kept the machine running, but everything else broke down. Factories churned out junk. Agriculture failed. Innovation lagged decades behind the West. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union, with some of the richest farmland on Earth, was importing grain. Why? Because central planning doesn't innovate, it imitates. And when efficiency dies, collapse isn't far behind. Because when control replaces competition, innovation dies. When effort brings no reward, production stops. Stage 3. Currency collapse. The ruble was never a trusted currency, not inside the USSR, not abroad. It couldn't be exchanged internationally, and even Soviet citizens preferred US dollars when they could get them. Foreign nations wouldn't touch it, so the Kremlin had to pay for imports with gold and oil. But when global oil prices crashed in 1985, those reserves started draining fast. The Soviet Union wasn't just running out of money, it was running out of trust. Stage 4. Loss of empire. Then came 1989, the year the Berlin Wall fell. Within months, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany, all gone. The buffer states that once gave Moscow global leverage vanished almost overnight. The Soviet army couldn't stop it, the KGB couldn't hide it, and the economy couldn't support it. The empire unraveled from the outside in. Stage 5, complete collapse. December 26, 1991. The Soviet Union officially ceased to exist. From the fall of the Berlin Wall to total dissolution took just 900 days. No nuclear war, no foreign invasion, just economic implosion. Soldiers went unpaid, government offices shut down. The ruble became worthless. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed. Not from enemies abroad, but from rot within. The pattern repeated. Military overreach, currency decay, unsustainable debt, loss of empire, total collapse. And here's what should keep you up at night. That same pattern, every single stage, is unfolding again right now, but this time, it's not Moscow. It's Washington. The United States is walking the exact same path as every fallen empire before it, and pretending it's different. Stage by stage, the collapse pattern is repeating itself in plain sight. Stage 1. Military overextension. America's reach has gone from global power to global burden. Over 750 military bases in 80 countries, troops in 150 nations, obligations to defend Europe through NATO, guard Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines, and still fight shadow wars in the Middle East, all while countering both China and Russia. That's not strategy, that's imperial burnout. The U.S. military budget? A jaw-dropping $850 billion a year, more than the next 10 countries combined. And yet, somehow, it's still not enough. Equipment is outdated. Recruitment is tanking. Morale is crumbling. And if China invades Taiwan, Russia pushes into NATO, and Iran blocks the Persian Gulf, Washington knows it can't handle all three at once. That's overextension, plain and simple. Just like Spain, just like Britain, just like the USSR. Stage 2, currency debasement. In 1971, Nixon pulled the plug on the gold standard. The dollar became just another piece of paper backed by faith, not metal. Since 2000, the U.S. money supply has exploded by 400%. And since 2020, Washington printed over $6 trillion out of thin air. This isn't stimulus, it's slow-motion suicide. The empire's printing press is running 24/7 to cover debts, wars, and bloated programs. And every dollar it spits out makes the ones in your wallet worth less. Different century, same playbook. The names change, the outcome doesn't. Stage 2, currency debasement. Since 1971, the dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. Back then, you could trade your paper for gold. Now it's backed by nothing but promises and politics. We're not mixing copper into silver coins anymore. We're just printing unlimited paper, different tools, same outcome. Currency debasement. Check. Stage 3, the debt spiral. The U.S. is $36 trillion in the hole. That's 120% of GDP. Interest payments alone are closing in on $1 trillion per year, which means we're spending more on interest than on defense. Think about that. The world's superpower is paying off interest the way a broke household pays off credit cards, by borrowing more deficits every single year. $1.8 trillion in 2024, and that's during peacetime and economic growth. We're literally borrowing money to pay interest on old borrowing. That's not fiscal policy. That's a death spiral. Spain defaulted 4 times. Britain borrowed itself into collapse. The USSR ran out of cash. Guess who's next? Check. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. America doesn't make things anymore. It outsources them. We design in California, finance in New York, and consume in Walmart. The factories? Gone. Move to China, Mexico, Vietnam. The U.S. now imports $800 billion more than it exports every single year. We rely on foreign supply chains for everything: medicine, electronics, steel, even military parts. Just like Spain, when its silver drained away, America's dollars flow out as dependency flows in. And when those dollars stop being accepted worldwide, the empire stops breathing. Check. Stage 5, social decay. That's when the cracks at the top start splitting the country from within. And America? It's already there. Stage 5, social decay. This is where every empire starts to rot from within, and America's right there. Trust in institutions has cratered to historic lows, crime is climbing, homelessness is exploding across major cities, drug overdoses now kill over 100,000 Americans every year. The nation's best and brightest are either leaving, disengaging, or drowning in cynicism. Meanwhile, fertility rates are collapsing, and political dysfunction has turned government into theater. We can't agree on anything, can't fix anything, can't even build anything. The signs of decay are everywhere. Everyone keeps pretending it's fine. It's not fine. Check. We're sitting at stage 5 of 7. The Soviet Union reached stage 5 before disintegration. Britain did too. Spain dragged it out longer, but the result was the same. America isn't at the end yet, but it's deep into the sequence. Stage 6, loss of reserve currency status. This is the moment when the empire's money, once worshipped, starts getting quietly abandoned allies. Diversify. Trade moves elsewhere, and suddenly the dollar comes flooding back home because nobody needs to hold it anymore. We're seeing it now. BRICS nations building alternatives, central banks hoarding gold, China and Russia trading in yuan and rubles, Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil. These are not random moves, they're warning flares. The cracks in the dollar's foundation are spreading. Stage 7, collapse. Not slow decline, not managed transition, collapse. The Soviet Union went from global superpower to vanished state in just 900 days. One moment it was commanding half the planet. The next, it was dust. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And right now, America's verse sounds hauntingly familiar. Stage 7, collapse. When empires reach the end of the line, they don't fade out, they implode. Britain lost its empire in just 20 years. Spain took longer, but the destination was identical. Once the reserve currency fails, the debt becomes unpayable and the military can't be funded. Decline stops being slow. It turns sudden, violent, and final. Every empire that thought it can't happen here learned the same brutal truth. It can, and it does. Spain, Britain, the USSR. 3 empires. 3 versions of the same story. Each convinced it was exceptional. Each believed the rules of history didn't apply. Each ended the same way. Broke, divided, and forgotten. And now, we're telling ourselves the same lies. We're different. We have technology. We have the dollar. We're America. But the pattern doesn't care about pride or patriotism. It doesn't care about slogans, progress, or political spin. The pattern is mathematical, and it's undefeated. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot sustain an empire without production, and you cannot defy economic gravity indefinitely. Every empire believes it's immortal, right up until the moment it isn't. You can't destroy your own currency and expect to walk away clean. History doesn't work like that. Once you've crossed stages 1 through 5, military overreach, debt expansion, currency debasement, social division, and political decay, there's no turning back. The pattern is locked. The only mystery left is when. 10 years? 5? Maybe less, but when it hits, it won't crawl. It'll crash. First comes the currency crisis, then the debt implodes, then the politics fracture. Overnight, the superpower becomes the warning. The reserve currency turns regional, and the empire becomes a case study in arrogance. It's happened before, 3 times, and every sign says we're next. Since 2020, we've hit the gas on every red flag, trillions printed. Debt mountains built higher, global commitment stretching thinner, manufacturing gutted, society splintered. We're not drifting toward collapse, we're racing into it. Sure, maybe there's a miracle coming. Maybe America will pull off what Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union couldn't. Reform, rebuild, and reset the system, but the pattern says otherwise. The math says otherwise. And history History says we're about to relearn what every dying empire before us had to. You can't outspend reality forever. If this opened your eyes to where we really are in the cycle, hit subscribe. Because when stage 6 and 7 hit, you won't have time to catch up. You'll want to understand what's happening and why. The truth isn't buried in the future. It's written in the past. And I'll show you exactly where to read it. They say empires last forever until they don't. One debt crisis, one lost war, one broken promise to the world, and the superpower everyone thought was untouchable starts to crumble from within. Suddenly, it's not about who has the biggest army or the loudest politicians. It's about who can still stand when the system itself starts to fail. That's what the 7 stages of collapse is really about. Patterns that never lie. Every empire believes it's different, right up until the numbers, the debt, and the delusion prove otherwise. And now, with America sliding into stage 5, the warning lights aren't blinking. They're blaring. Because collapse doesn't happen in a single day. It's a slow-motion fall disguised as progress. While most people argue about left or right, the foundation is cracking underneath them. But those who understand history know what comes next. And they're already adapting. If this breakdown opened your eyes, good. It should. Drop a comment. Which stage do you think America can't come back from? We might feature your take in the next video, and make sure to subscribe, because next time we're revealing how stage 6 begins the moment the dollar dies. Until then, stay alert, stay informed, and remember, empires don't fall overnight. They fall the same way they rose, one stage at a time.